Salad oil swindle. In 1963, Anthony Tino de Angelis claimed to hold massive reserves of soybean oil in New Jersey tanks. Inspectors tested the tanks by dipping sticks inside, and sure enough, oil came up. But the tanks were mostly filled with seawater. Only the top few inches held oil, just enough to fool the inspectors. De Angelis used this illusion to secure over $150 million in loans and credit. When the scam collapsed, it caused massive losses. American Express took such a hit that its stock was nearly halved. It remains one of the most ridiculous and devastating financial scams in U.S. history. Bernie Madoff. For decades, Bernie Madoff was the king of Wall Street. His investment firm promised steady, almost magical returns, even during market downturns. Big names trusted him. Even regulators looked the other way. But it was all a lie. Madoff was running a $65 billion Ponzi scheme, simply using money from new clients to pay the old ones. Fake statements, fake trades, no real investments. The 2008 crash triggered too many withdrawal requests. The scheme crumbled. Madoff was arrested, sentenced to 150 years in prison. Thousands of people, charities, and retirees lost everything. Nigerian prince scam. It starts with a bizarre email. A foreign prince needs help transferring millions and will reward you generously. You just have to pay a small fee up front. That's the advance fee scam, also called the Nigerian prince scam. It's been around since the 1980s, evolving from mailed letters to emails. Victims are slowly drained with requests for processing fees, taxes, or bribes. The misspellings? They're on purpose, designed to weed out skeptical people. Only the most gullible reply. Over time, this scam has brought in hundreds of millions of dollars, often from lonely or elderly victims. It's one of the most successful low-tech scams in internet history. Eiffel Tower scam. In 1925, Victor Lustig read that the Eiffel Tower was becoming too expensive to maintain. So he posed as a government official and invited top scrap dealers to a secret auction. He convinced one buyer the sale was confidential and urgent, then accepted a bribe to secure the deal. The victim only realized the truth after Lustig disappeared with the money. And the twist? Lustig came back to Paris weeks later and ran the same scam again on a second dealer. He's one of the few men in history to sell the Eiffel Tower, not once, but twice. Theranos. Elizabeth Holmes promised to revolutionize healthcare. Her startup, Theranos, claimed its machine could perform hundreds of blood tests from a single finger prick. Investors lined up. Walgreens partnered with them. Her company reached a valuation of $9 billion. But there was a problem. The tech didn't work. Theranos secretly used traditional machines and faked test results. Patients received dangerous misdiagnoses. Doctors were misled. It was medical fraud at scale. Whistleblowers spoke out, and journalists uncovered the truth. Holmes was convicted of fraud in 2022 and sentenced to over a decade in prison. Emu Farming Scam. In 2012, companies in India promoted emu farming as the next big thing. They promised guaranteed buybacks and huge profits from emu meat, oil, and leather. Thousands of families, many from rural villages, invested everything. Some sold homes or land to afford the birds. But there was no real market. The companies simply paid old investors using money from new ones. When funds ran out, the businesses disappeared, leaving over 12,000 investors broke. Some were so devastated they took their own lives. The birds? Mostly abandoned. Crypto exchange collapse. Gerald Cotton, CEO of Canada's biggest crypto exchange, died suddenly in India in 2018, supposedly from Crohn's disease. He was the only person who knew the passwords to $250 million in user funds. But investigators later discovered the wallets were already empty. Cotton had used customer deposits to fund a lavish lifestyle and pay off earlier users. A textbook Ponzi scheme. No autopsy was done. The body was never independently identified. Many believe Cotton faked his death and escaped with the money. To this day, most of it remains unaccounted for. Frank Abagnale. Before his 21st birthday, Frank Abagnale posed as a Pan Am pilot, flew over 1 million miles for free, and forged checks worth millions in over 25 countries. He also pretended to be a lawyer, a doctor, and a college professor, all without credentials. He got hired, paid, and trusted. His greatest weapon? Confidence. Eventually captured in France, Abagnale served time, then began working for the FBI to help catch fraudsters. His life story was turned into the film Catch Me If You Can, and most of it, incredibly, is true. Charles Ponzi. In 1920, Charles Ponzi promised investors 50% profit in just 45 days. His secret? Buying international postage coupons and reselling them at a profit. That was the story, at least. In truth, there were barely any coupon trades. He just paid earlier investors with new ones' money. At its peak, he was making $250,000 a day. But when the scheme collapsed, 40,000 people lost everything. The damage was so huge, his name became the global term for this kind of fraud, the Ponzi scheme. Lou Pearlman. He created NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys, and also ran a $300 million scam in the background. Pearlman invented fake companies, forged financial documents, and sold safe investment plans to individuals, banks, even church groups. He kept the illusion going for 2 decades by using new money to pay old investors. Even family members were duped. When it collapsed, hundreds of people lost their life savings. Pearlman was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He died behind bars in 2016. Fyre Festival. Billed as an ultra-luxury music festival on a private island, Fyre Festival was backed by supermodels, flashy ads, and influencers. But when guests arrived in 2017, there were no villas, no music, and barely any food. Just disaster relief tents and soggy cheese sandwiches. Organizer Billy McFarland raised millions on false promises and spent most of it before the event began. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Fyre Festival became the ultimate social media scam. All hype, zero reality. Enron. Enron was once considered America's most innovative company. It claimed to revolutionize energy trading. In reality, it used complex accounting tricks to hide billions in debt. Executives created fake partnerships to shift losses off the books and inflate profits. Share prices soared, and employees were encouraged to invest their pensions. When the truth came out in 2001, $74 billion in shareholder value vanished. Thousands lost their jobs and retirements. Top executives went to prison. Enron remains one of the most infamous corporate frauds ever. Bre-X gold hoax. In the mid-1990s, Canadian mining firm Bre-X announced the discovery of a gold deposit in Indonesia so large it would change the industry. The stock soared. Billions in investor capital flowed in. But it was all a lie. The samples had been salted with gold shavings from jewelry to fake the results. When the fraud was uncovered, the stock became worthless. The company's geologist died, either by falling or jumping from a helicopter. The collapse wiped out investors and became one of the biggest mining scams in history. Fake Saudi prince. Anthony Guignac spent over 30 years pretending to be a Saudi royal. He fooled hotels, luxury retailers, and even high-level investors by posing as Prince Khalid. He lived in mansions, drove Lamborghinis, and dined on caviar, all funded by fraud. At one point, he tried to scam a billionaire out of $440 million in a fake oil investment. But his act slipped when he ordered bacon at a business lunch, something a real Saudi royal would never do. That triggered an investigation, and the entire scheme unraveled. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for similar ones and feel free to drop suggestions for the next video in the comments.